Today we're riding alongside Jamieson Roberts on something resembling his typical morning school drop-off with his 2 kids. Then we'll head off to do a jaunt around downtown, stopping at a few notable locations that Jamieson wants to shed some light on. Of course, throughout this ride-along, you'll be hearing a bunch of great tidbits from Jamieson himself. He'll be sharing his thoughts as we go. And future Ben's voice will pop in and out of this ride-along video to provide context and guidance for you, so that you're not left wondering what the heck is happening. We'll end our ride-along over at the London Bicycle Cafe, where we'll stop, lock up, and record a Wheels and Beyond podcast episode, which you can then listen to or watch by tapping the link in the description below this video. Alright, let's start by hitting the road in downtown London, Canada, quickly followed by jumping into the protected bike lane on Dundas Street as soon as we can.
Do not consider the fact that I'm wearing polarized glasses and I cannot see the screen. That is less helpful.
Needless to say, I took them off. As we sit here in the left turn lane, you might be wondering why we are not in those wonderful bike lanes. Well, you need to get to them first. And I couldn't have planned this any better.
Oh boy. Cover your ears, girls.
This is a perfect example of how vulnerable you are when you are on a bicycle. So thanks, Jamieson, for getting your kids to cover their ears, because these are really loud sounds and people need to protect their hearing. It was kind of hard for me to cover my ears because I was holding the camera in this case, but normally, whether it's police cars or ambulances, I pull over and cover my ears whenever they come by. And I would recommend you do the same. You can't get your hearing back. And as we are going to be turning left here, we've been sitting in the left turn lane for vehicles, and bicycles are vehicles. But we need to get to the bike lane, so when we do this turn, you'll see instead of turning into the car lane, we turn into this bike lane here. And this is a protected bicycle lane. It is wonderful and runs the length of Dundas Street. Okay, not all of it, but from downtown, the majority of Dundas Street is protected, and it's amazing. It is interesting how if someone is in the bike lane, typically, if you just ring your bell gently, they will get out of the way. Unlike with vehicles, it is a lot easier to step to the side as a pedestrian. Now this is cool. It's a protected intersection, and you'll notice that this is where Jamieson and his kids are able to wait, protected from vehicles.
What's that?
How do you find the protected intersections?
I wish they were everywhere. They make it that much nicer. Although this is a good spot to ultimately highlight where the protected intersection is great. Where the problem happens is up ahead, where people decide that their priority of dropping off their kid to high school and parking in the bike lane is more important than my safety.
But speaking of safety, this protected intersection is in fact amazing. So here we go. We continue on to Colburn Street, which is northbound. And right here is where the drivers decide to stop, which is not great. And it's just very interesting how vehicles take up so much space compared to bicycles.
Green means go!
Woo! We're continuing along. You have to watch for right hooks on every bike lane ever, pretty much, but especially on these ones. I know for a fact that a lot of drivers say that bike lanes are always empty, and it's not as clear-cut as just looking at the bike lane and saying that it's never used, because bicycles are such small, nimble vehicles that they often clear the bike lanes much faster than traffic that is, sitting in traffic. But because we are on the way to drop off his kids at school, I'm going to cut to a future soundbite right now where I start asking Jamieson,
why don't they take the school bus? Why do you end up biking?
Because it's so close and convenient. Ultimately, I'll give a little story. There's a neighbor in our building whose kid also goes to this school, and they routinely drive, and we will always beat them going by bike.
How so?
Just speed-wise. We will get to school faster than they will, driving and dropping off.
But I thought that was physically impossible.
Not for a kilometer-long trek.
Back to the kids here, they have been having a riot on the back of this cargo bike. They're able to see what's around them a lot easier than if they were in a car. Now watch how awesome step-throughs are,
Right.
especially in this situation.
What, do you two want to get off here?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. I'm going to go on a ride, okay, girls? And a wild crocodile.
When do they end up taking off their helmets? Do they just put them in the inside?
At some point. They're so used to them that ultimately they just kind of like, they just leave them on by default. They don't half the time notice them. So like, they'll just leave them on randomly when we're not expecting them to. It's like, okay. The speed at which we were able to get to school and get around things it's nicer than walking on a hot, humid day like this. And the reality is that it's just faster and more convenient.
And right before we get going to the rest of the ride along, here's a little IKEA by bike story.
So my partner had probably the best possible setup for getting stuff loaded onto this. And ultimately we were picking up some stuff from IKEA, the IKEA pickup spot here in town. So she had 2 panners loaded up with stuff. She had a box here, and then we were getting a bookshelf. And so she put the big long bits right along here. So her legs fit in between, and away she went. And from there it was, 10-kilometer round trip back home, and away, and there was our IKEA pickup.
And now we head off to the rest of the ride.
So hopefully people won't complain too much about us rolling slowish. But I mean, that's ultimately kind of one of the downsides to, it's one of the benefits and one of the downsides to grid neighborhoods, is people expect to go really fast in them. And they expect to treat them like shortcuts, when the reality is that they're just easy and convenient neighborhoods. They're not your neighborhood shortcut. They are where people live, which is also kind of ties into a pet peeve of mine that the city has, which is everyone treats the downtown like it's a place to go to for events. But the reality is that it's a neighborhood, and everyone seems to forget that it's my neighborhood. And so all the marketing is like, go visit downtown. No, F that. Go live downtown, be there. You're not just going to someplace, you are going to someone's neighborhood.
And so, thoughts on the additional neighbors? As in, because the population density is finally increasing, which I kind of think is good, but yeah, thoughts on that?
I mean, more people is better. I've heard a phrase before, which is more data, more better. More people, more better. The key to a thriving downtown is ultimately that people are living there. And that, that's how you have a vibrant and thriving downtown. That's how you have shops. That's how you have cafes. That's how downtown is the perfect place. And the surrounding neighborhoods, as we're seeing here, are the perfect place to ride and not drive. Because the reality is that it's so close and convenient that there's no reason why you wouldn't ride your bike to get around.
All right,
Yeah, because there's some nasty bumps here. And that's kind of don't get me wrong, I love the construction, but the reality is that they've done nothing to make it accessible. Because you've got like these 2-inch curbs, like cement lips here, that you basically have to walk your bike over. Unless you want to damage your tire.
As you will see here, there are actually some nice little ramps that are temporary. They should just be in more places, like along the detour, where people will be frequenting while this is all under construction.
I stand corrected. They at least made some of them nicer.
I do have a problem with the other side of this, because you get to the other side and then it's like, well, now what?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously this project is partially done. And yeah, it serves and solves a legitimate problem. I mean, it doesn't solve the problem that ultimately we need to not be, there are so many societally structural problems that this is emblematic of. People need to go faster and not have interruptions to get to their 3 jobs because people aren't paid enough to be able to just only have 1 job to go to. So like, it's there's such a structural balance issue, but at least when we're doing projects like this, then it does help. We're kind of pitting, we're doing what we do everywhere, which is we shove cyclists and pedestrians into the same space. And I get it. I do understand. It's a nice wide boulevard. It's convenient. It's comfy. I'm not going to complain about that. But at the same time, you also then do put in potential conflicts between people. Is it probably the best solution? It probably is. I don't inherently disagree that it's probably the best solution, and especially with what's planned for Central and the connection into McMahon Park and the neighborhood behind it, and probably more critically than all is the connection into the grocery store, which is basically where we kind of shop all the time, because it's easy and convenient. We're in a protected bike lane from home. We're in a protected bike lane from, basically the rest of the way. And then you're in the back of a neighborhood and you go into a grocery store. 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers, I don't know, something like that. And you're basically safe the whole way. And picking up your groceries on this awesome thing.
So that's something that you regularly do?
Yeah. Yeah, we do that all the time in terms of picking up groceries. Because why not? I mean, you can put $400 worth of groceries on this thing and it weighs less than a human. And this thing can carry 2 adults. So why not? My partner has some great Instagram stories where she'll do have the bike unloaded in a cart, and then she'll say tap to load, and the next one is the bike fully loaded up with our week's worth of groceries, and that's it. I mean, ultimately, you don't need to shop every 2 weeks. Do a small shop once a week, or a medium shop once a week, or a small shop once every 3 days. It's probably faster than you spending 3 hours in the grocery store bashing your head trying to figure out everything you need to plan out for the next 2 weeks.
How many family members do you have?
We have 4 family members, 2 adults, 2 tinies.
I have a lot of people telling me that it's impossible to only have bikes, but you only have 2 bikes, correct?
Yeah, we have 2 cargo bikes, and the kiddos also have their own bikes, although today, because of the threat of possible rain, my oldest didn't ride hers to school. Normally she does, unless we think it's really gonna rain later on in the day, because she doesn't like riding in the rain.
Let's move on to the Oxford and William Street protected intersection now. Jamieson has some very interesting commentary and insights about it.
Well, the only thing that frustrates me about this intersection is that there isn't the priority given to pedestrians and cyclists needing to cross the street. This is literally designed to solve the problem of how do I cross a raging river, and it doesn't do it on demand. It's probably my only complaint. Oh, nice red run, Betty.
So now that we have crossed the raging river, so to speak, we're gonna pull off to the side for a few minutes and have a chat about this intersection.
In terms of execution, this is probably one of the top things the city has done. It's straight out of Vancouver's playbook for how you cross a major street for pedestrians and cyclists. You prevent hooks by placement of the cyclist. Cyclists can roll up. They have a place to put their foot on the curb, and the button is within reach. You don't have to dismount. It's just perfectly placed. And it's awesome. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's intuitive, and it lets you just cross. And because of that simplicity, that's what makes it beautiful. It's not convoluted, it's not complicated. It's just straightforward for everyone. You know where you're going, you know where you can't, and away you go.
And meanwhile, there's a bunch of trucks going here, and it's actually totally fine.
Yeah, exactly. No problem at all. This is a quiet street. It's designed with really narrow intersections up that way. So it's traffic calmed, it's quiet. It's one adjacent from Adelaide. So if you're trying to go along Adelaide, you have a nice, calm, quiet street to go. So this is just an awesome piece of hidden infrastructure that you know, bless his soul, Jerry LaHaye fought tooth and nail for before he passed to get this in. He was, for those that don't know, he was an accessibility advocate. He was sometimes wheelchair bound, sometimes not, but he was a double amputee. But he was probably one of the most ardent supporters for cycling infrastructure, because just from an accessibility perspective, it makes his life easier. Bike lanes are incredibly smooth for wheelchair users. It gives a safe space for cyclists to be in so that they're not on the sidewalk when needed. And it just generally calms the street and makes it safer for everyone, which is what anyone ever wants.
Compared to before, like, did you ever use this road?
Never.
Why?
Because, I mean, I'd use it either north of Oxford or south of Oxford, but I'd never use it in total because it was impossible to cross without playing Frogger and putting your life in the mix. And so now I actually fairly regularly use this. You know, I'll use Colburn depending on where I'm going. If I know I'm going over to like Merlimay, I'll come over here to William and I'll ride and I'll use this awesome crossing and then go through the quiet streets up to like Victoria and jump over. It really depends on where I'm going, but now there's the option and that's just sweet.
Yep. Also, I'm just noticing this now, and this is obviously part of it, but drivers used to try to turn left here all the time.
Yes. And it caused traffic accidents right here. Pretty nasty ones.
Yeah, because they're just like full on speed and suddenly
exactly.
boom.
Someone's booking it that way and they don't see this person turning and suddenly you've got a T-bone and someone's in hospital for 3 weeks. So not only has it made it better for cyclists and pedestrians, but it's actually made it safer for drivers too.
If people don't care about lives, it even helps you because the traffic from a collision sucks.
The traffic from a collision sucks. It calms these streets. You know, this is a partially filtered permeability street now, meaning that you really are only supposed to turn off of it or turn onto it, but you can't go straight across, which means it cuts down on cut-through traffic. And chiefly, that's what people's complaint is about grid-like streets, is people use them as cut-throughs. Well, there's a solution for that. That's making it so that you have to enter via one of the major streets, like Cheapside, and then you turn onto it. Make it inconvenient to get into the neighborhood, but not inconvenient to get out. And then suddenly you've got nice, quiet, calm residential streets. You don't have to put in bike lanes because people can just ride on the streets because they're actually safe.
Then we took a few side streets to hop on over to Colburn Street, and now we are proceeding southbound on this painted bike lane, which on the other side of Oxford turns into a wonderful protected bike lane, which is debatably one of the best bike lanes in all of London because of that protection. And if you're wondering why it's only painted bike lanes north of Oxford, which is where we are right now, it's because of a bunch of different factors, including the fact that vehicle traffic volumes did not reach the required arbitrary number.
If you look up ahead, there's a dad going the other way with a bike seat on the back of his acoustic.
Make note of that comment that Jamieson just brought up, because in a few blocks, he's going to go into more detail about that. But briefly, these small interactions are insanely important to a thriving, friendly city, which is why I keep on bringing this up throughout all of my videos. Streets for people. But yeah, as you can see, look how pleasant this is to be biking on this protected infrastructure. It's wonderful. And guess what? We're out of the way of drivers, so they can pass on by while we meander in our bike lane at our own pace. And going back to kids for a moment, this is really important for kids because you don't want to be rushing kids and you don't want to be dangerously passing kids either as a driver. So separating and segregating the infrastructure is extraordinarily important for all road users. If you go back on Google Street View and look at what Colburn was just a few years ago before this protected infrastructure was added to the street, it's pretty much vomit-inducing because it's so ugly, and all that was sacrificed realized in adding this infrastructure was some parking on one side of the street. And if you're very annoyed by that, look at how many driveways there still are and how many parking lots there still are. And those were never removed. And instead you have a huge amount of unused parking still, but you have incredibly protected bike lanes. That's a pretty good balance. You might also notice that traffic here is still a little bit backed up, but that was always the case, and it was literally never a 3-lane road. It was just parking. But now you have 2 extra lanes that bicycles are able to use, which inherently reduces traffic because it diverts people who, let's say, are sitting in traffic and notice, hey, there's an open lane there if I were to bike to work. And so it allows those people who can bike to bike, because so many people don't want to be in danger when just getting from point A to point B. But if you add that protection, it allows way more people to be able to ride a bicycle instead of just the top 1% of spandex-clad cyclists. It also makes streets safer.
So this is gonna be finished.
This year, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
One thing I wanted to highlight before we go too far, one thing that everyone always misses and forgets is the social element. So back a ways there, I waved at a couple of people, mainly because 2 of them, I don't know. But they're on a bike and I can see them and they're smiling and they're having a great time. So why wouldn't I wave and say hello? Another person, I waved because I know them. But the social aspect, the absolute isolationism that occurs when you're in a car is just absolutely suffocating. And it's not something you think about. It's not something that unless you are consciously thinking about the psychological effects of riding a bike, but it's just inherently social, which is just absolutely wonderful. And it can be so energizing.
I fully agree.
So anyway, Central should be done this year. They haven't started it yet, but also it's for the most part a curb plonk and some paint. So it's not a hugely expansive project, unless they're gonna do a shave and pave, which arguably they should, but even that won't take them more than a week. But I think you can see up here, they're already starting some of it. But what this is gonna do is it's gonna connect both Adelaide and one of our primary arteries to our primary chief crown jewel of the city, as people put it, park. And so people will have a safe method to be able to get from protected infrastructure and safety over via protected infrastructure and safety to festivals. And I don't know about anyone else, but I don't like parking my car when I'm trying to go to a festival at Victoria Park. That's not a fun time. But parking my bike, way easier.
Someone literally about that video, because it was right here,
Yeah.
that was, someone's like, well, you should use the protected infrastructure. And I'm like, how am I supposed to get to it?
Yeah. I would love to. I would love to.
I want to. Believe me.
Yeah. Watch out, car park. Give this racing car a chance to get around us. But it's like, I would love to use the protected infrastructure to get to the park. Yep. There is none right now. Exactly. So tell me how I'm supposed to do that? I can get you like 3 blocks away. Okay.
And what he's getting at there is a connected, safe grid. Because would you, as a driver, go anywhere that doesn't have a connection by road? Like, no, really, it's something that people complain about when singular bike lanes are installed in the middle of cities that are not part of a full connected grid network of cycling infrastructure, because how are people on bicycles supposed to get to that infrastructure in the first place? They can't. So then that cycling infrastructure is underutilized because no one's using it because it's not connected to anything. It's like complaining that drivers aren't using a random road in the middle of a cornfield connected to nothing.
I both like seeing when people drop off people like that, but it's also frustrating and annoying because it just creates so many headaches when you're trying to navigate an already hostile city. But it's also one of the things where it's like, okay, you're clearly carpooling, so you wanna know what? I'll take that. You're not driving your own vehicle, but have a thought about where you're stopping maybe. Not just, you know, it's not gonna kill the person for them to walk 250 meters if it's a little bit safer for you to stop there. You know, as Tom Flood has said, you know, bicycles deliver on the convenience that auto ads promise. The problem ultimately is that so many people take that convenience to the extreme and expect the convenience as opposed to realizing that they are literally in a 8-foot by 10-foot metal box that consumes so much space and resources that is not even funny.
Yeah. And now it's an expectation. So taking that away seems like, or what is it? Equity seems like oppression when you're used to
Having it all,
having it all.
for lack of a better way to put it. Yep, exactly. I'm gonna press the button because otherwise we're not gonna cross. And we have green. Well, let's roll.
The sensors that are not here but are elsewhere are pretty awesome.
Oh, I love the radar sensors. They beat the pants off of the metal loops. We just need more of them.
He means the normal sensors for cars, which often never pick up light bicycles because we're not multi-ton vehicles.
Frequency, or the, we went to Montreal.
Yep.
And oh my goodness.
I mean, frequency makes everything better, period.
For everyone, including vehicles, because like, anyways, how many times?
And it doesn't matter what mode of transport it's applied to.
Yep. Yep. And so it's just really annoying when the frequency is so damn slow.
Yeah.
Or like the response time, etc. Yep.
Now we are coming up on Blackfriars Street Bridge, not to be confused with the real Blackfriars Bridge elsewhere in the world. So the actual Wikipedia article that I'm about to read a little bit on, just because, you know, we're on a tour anyways, is called Blackfriars Street Bridge. It's here in London, Ontario. It's a wrought iron bowstring arch through truss bridge. That's a mouthful. Crossing the North Thames River. The bridge was constructed in 1875 and carries single-lane vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians from Blackfriars Street to Rideout Street North. At 216 feet, or 66 meters, it is the longest working span of that kind in North America. And recently, it's been part of film sets, so that's pretty cool. Meanwhile, this is the West London Dyke. The construction of it began in the 1800s, and it is 2.4 kilometers long, which now protects over 1,000 structures. It's been raised and strengthened many times, and is currently the focus of major ongoing rehabilitation efforts.
This is probably one of my favorite skyline views. So I take every opportunity to ride this, looking that way towards the core. And it's only going to get better as we get more towers cropping out of the trees. But and the story I'll use for this is, I don't know, last year, we have a weekly meeting at work. And every week someone does an icebreaker activity. And so for one of them, I said, you know, someone said like, what's your favorite view of your city? And so like, it dawned on me that this crossing here is probably one of the absolute most beautiful views of the mixture of urban and what it should feel like to live in a proper city, where you've got housing, you've got amenities, you've got nature, you've got density, and you just got it all. And as much as a photo is awesome, a photo also doesn't do the 360 view of it all. Yep, I'm gonna take the bike lane down to the crossing. This is also a pretty good piece of infrastructure. The biggest downside, especially on this side, is its isolation. You've got these sweet little like shoulders of safety in amidst a bike lane that is terrifying at the best of times to ride in. And I'm a big white dude, and I find it scary to ride along here. It is not pleasant, but if you can get here through the neighborhood, or if you're coming this way, for example, it's awesome. Because not only is it designed for you to actually legally ride across, but it's just works for getting you across that angry torrential river of Riverside for car traffic. So like, it works really well. And like stuff like this in terms of like this bi-directional huge bike boulevard, yes, please, more of this. Because this is what makes it safe, this is what makes it appealing. You got the cars racing more than a meter away from you, and you got nice separation between pedestrians and cyclists, and it's just great. You know, I'm wearing a t-shirt that says sidewalks are sexy, but you wanna know what? Separated bike lanes are also pretty darn sexy.
So thoughts on these?
On this bridge crossing?
Yeah, so like they do have the concrete, which is nice.
Yeah, so
That matters.
in terms of like making it feel safe to ride across here, the way they've done it is perfect. Well, not perfect, but pretty darn good.
Got it. I don't know where you're going. Whoops. Okay, I'll see you in a second.
Hey, John. In terms of like the cheap and cheerful execution of it, 10 out of 10. You know, they plonked down a bunch of curbs, they repainted it, they did some resurfacing. Short, fast, quick execution, great. They didn't do the full design, which was originally that there would be physical separators rather than just the green posts. I think that would, in an absolutely ideal sense, that would be perfect. It's loud and it doesn't feel 100% safe because you do have, you know, multi-ton vehicles racing past you. But because of the uninterrupted barrier of the curbs, it's probably about as good as we're gonna get. And you wanna know what? It beats the pants off of 90% of the streets out there. So, you know, in the whole idea of perfect is the enemy of the good, it's fantastic. You know, think about how far we've traversed in the city, and we arrived a half hour earlier than we thought we were going to.
Yeah, we're like, whoops.
Oh well.
Oh, can you tell me about how awesome like this bike parking is?
I mean, it's the best in the city. Because, and like, you know, you've got the coverage, you've got, I mean, proper bike staples that people can attach to from both sides. You know, can we have more of this, please? Please? Because ultimately, like, this is, you know, going places is great, is like being able to go places safely is critical, but also if you have no place to park at the end, it's ultimately useless. Then you are relegated to being a recreational cyclist only, not someone who chooses to get around by bike.
Yeah. Destinations are key.
Yep.
And, you know, being able to lock up at those destinations.
And feel safe doing so.
Yes. Oh, and the roofs, you know.
Well,
weather happens.
yeah.
Oh, not only that, the rain is like annoying, that's fine, but snow can actually be detrimental to your bike. And like, if the bike racks are filled up with 2 meters of snow, not happening.
This is actually something that can be cleared because the bike staples themselves are not going to be covered.
Yep, exactly.
Well, thank you very much for coming along for the ride along. And if you've made it this far, wow, thank you for watching the entire way through. And by doing so, you are part of the superfan crowd. I appreciate you so much. If you want to help me out even more, obviously make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment about anything you want. And if you're able to, I've opened up a Patreon and a YouTube membership. And to be honest, Patreon takes less of a cut of the money. Both are approximately the same tiers, and you get benefits ranging from being a literal co-producer and getting to chat with me one-on-one every month, to simply supporting the production of these videos and getting access to behind-the-scenes content and priority responses to comments. If this sounds like something that you would be interested in doing, go check out the links in the description. Every single cent goes towards the production of these videos in some way, shape, or form. Thanks again.